welcome to the 56th episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies. Tonight, this episode is brought to you by Jack and
Jamie.
Yeah.
Even when there's only three of us, we still screw it up.
Yes,
We're so
yes.
talented on this. Oh my gosh.
I'm so proud of each of you, each and every one of you, and that's staying in, by the way. Outstanding. So tonight, it's going to be a lighter episode tonight. There's only the three of us, and I sound like I've smoked Lucky Stripes every day since I was 13.
Well, you do, don't you?
No, I chew them up and then I spit them out. It's like bubble gum.
Speaking as someone who did smoke Lucky Stripes for like 20 years, I don't sound like that, and I'm kind of proud of it.
Are you sure about that, buddy?
No, not really.
Outstanding. All right, so we're going to go into hobby progress tonight. We are going to go over the news. We are going to go over previews of exciting new heads that I didn't think we were going to get. Would that be a fair assessment of that?
That's a very fair assessment of that. And a new Praetor model that I did not think was coming at all anytime soon, but I'm definitely happy to see.
Yep.
Kind of out of the blue on this.
Out of the blue. And then maybe we'll dabble into some more stuff as we decide. So hobby progress, I'll go ahead and kick us off because mine is fairly simple to do. I painted blue and then more blue. And then I have clear coated and then washed a lot of blue. And then going to clean that off. And by that I mean of my Stormbird, Thunderhawk, a couple Cerastus, a couple drop pods, all for the R5 paint challenge. Those should be done probably tomorrow. And then I've been working on the Brass Scorpion that I totally forgot that I said I was going to do for this month too, for this vehicles. So he's been base coated. Now he's had the candy red put down, and I've spent entirely too much time today putting down liquid mask on it so that I can go back and get the trimming, because I now remember why I don't do chaotic armies, and that's because of the trim. So I'm gonna kick it over to Duncan, who I feel has been also productive this week. What have you been doing, brother?
So this week I've assembled 5 more Angel's Tears because I need 40 of them. I've got the base reds down on all of them. I've got their assault cannons on them. I've got the base blacks down on them. I haven't got their metals or their wash level done. I was planning to work some on the con the past couple days, but I did not, unfortunately, because life got in the way. And by life, I mean holding hobby hangouts and working on the most glorious of Hawk Boys. I've posted some of his pictures of the process of painting him in the actual hobby work in progress channel on our Discord and on our Facebook group. But where to start? I'm done with the golds on him. I'm done with the reds on him. I've done his gems. I've done his highlighting all his gold. I've done his face, which was a 4-hour process last night, along with his hair. I've done his robe, his panther, leopard, cat skin thing. It looks. I'm overjoyed with how well he is turning out at this point. Today I have spent time working on his wings, and when I say I spent time working on his wings, I mean they look a dirty white. Kind of like an actual owl's wing, or snowy owl's wings look. They're not really white, they're kind of an off-white, and that's kind of how these look. I'm probably going to have to go back and give the wings at least 1 or 2 more coats of a white just to kind of bring them up a little bit brighter. I've also got started on his epaulets that hang and dangle everywhere, and on his Melta pistol thing that's on his belt that I haven't actually decided if I'm going to put on the model or not. Beyond that, I ordered some more paint because I need more paint. Lord knows I need more paint, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. Been fiddling with trying to find a good jet bike to stick with the con on a base for the Toys for Tots Army, but I haven't found one that I like or that is appropriately sized for him. So that's being a bit of a problem. I'm not certain if I'm actually going to have the bike for the Toys for Tots Army con, or if it will just be a con on foot. Haven't decided on that one yet.
Well, I mean, he is big. He is kind of big. So
True, true. But that is all that I have gotten done this week. I'm hoping to finish Sanguinius off early in next week and hopefully be about the exact same area with the con this time next week as I am today with Sanguinius. But we'll see. And at this point, that's all I've got done. So, Jamie, take it away, sir.
So, I this week been really busy. In the fall, I usually am just because of everything going on with the family. But I was able to get some hobbying done. I got weathered up, finished the most expensive rhino ever made, and it's in the display case with the rest of the rhinos. And then I also finished up a Whirlwind Scorpius, fully painted, weathered, all that. Decals, it's in there too. It's all sealed up. And then today I started working on one of the new plastic Sarkarians, which I found out today that those kits are... It's not a hard build, it's a lot. Like, I can knock out one of the new plastic Spartans or Land Raiders pretty quickly, and this kit took me about 3.5, 4 hours to build. And I was like literally working just on it, like not bothered. So, I don't know. Maybe I've got a couple more of them I got to build, and I've got some of the old ones to build. It's just, as I've said with all the other GW plastic kits that we've gotten so far, they seem unnecessarily complicated to be just complicated. They're good. They're really nice kits. They fit together really well. It's like there's way too many subsections on every little thing. That just seems a lot of it's unneeded. And I think it was because they're trying to scrimp as much as they could to fit every little piece. Instead of having larger pieces, or they do like tiny little sub-assemblies to make a larger piece to fit like on the most minimum number of sprues they possibly can in a box. Basically what it amounts to.
Do you think that since Heresy is geared to a older demographic, they were trying to make it more in line with traditional scale model of tanks? Make it a little bit more challenging?
Maybe. I mean, I used to build scale tanks and scale aircraft a lot. Now, mind you, my painting wasn't good, but I actually really did enjoy putting together the models. And it's kind of along that lines. It just seems like it's very, very, again, like to do a sub-assembly like the turret or like the an example, the ammo box on the turret, instead of being like 2 parts, it's 4 parts. You have the corner, top, bottom, like you do with like a bang blade. And then like, as I was telling Jack earlier, like each one of the accelerator autocannons, you've got the barrel, you've got the main gun part, then you have armor that goes on that, then you have like 2 back end caps, then you have thing that attaches all the back end caps, and then you have like 2 barrel tips that have to go on both of those, just for the autocannon. Whereas the Forge World one was like the whole thing in one part.
Well, do you think it's just because when they could build it in resin and have it all done as one pour, that's actually harder to do with the actual plastics?
I think it's that, and as I said, in addition to trying to fit as much as possible on the most minimal number of sprues, and the way you do that is that you make bigger parts, smaller sub parts, so that you don't have long parts taking up huge real estate on the sprue. You have smaller parts that add up to the bigger parts, so that you fit more of them in general on.
Well, this leads perfectly into the Castigator on the news, because have you seen the ammo feed for that thing?
I have, and I've built I have several of the old ones, and I have several of the attributes too.
I want to say
the flexible ammo feed.
Yep.
I want to say when I looked at it, it was every piece of the chain with something like 3 different pieces, and there's
I
30
think
or
it's
40.
2.
Yeah.
Each link is 2 pieces.
Yeah, that honestly looks terrifying. I mean,
Well, I mean, the old one, if you've built the old castigator, that ammo feed is thick. Very, very thick.
I have not built the old one. What I have built is the old Dorito with its ammo feeds,
Yeah.
and those were thick as well.
So, like, I have like a real legit hobby heat gun, and that makes short work of thick resin, especially forge world resin. So, it wasn't so much a problem for me, but I know other people have, because the problem is when you get it hot enough and you keep working it, the resin actually will end up tearing. Like, it just, like, tears when it gets hot, too. So you have to be really careful with that. I'm intrigued with that and the feed line on the other one, too, for the flamer. Because that one I had a lot of trouble with because I got way too dynamic with the pose that made it. But anyways, they're good kits. The transfers are beautiful for them. I wish you could. I want just the transfers for my old knights that I have that I've already built and painted. But yeah, they're cool kits. A little expensive, but I think it was pretty much in line with what we'd been guessing before, even before the Lancer came out.
What was
I
their
do
price
like
point
how
on them?
posable they look.
Yeah. They are very posable, but they have kind of like sit poses on the sprues. I mean, that are already on the parts. And apparently, you have to nip off like a little tab or something like that to get some of the posability in the legs. It's not as posable from what I've heard as the old resin ones, but it's pretty good. So.
And for $200, that's a heck of a model right there.
Yeah, it is. They're cool models. Period.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they just. John can speak on the rules wise because I haven't played them yet in the new edition, but I just think they're cool looking. So that's just me.
Absolutely cool looking. And with that, going after pre-order is also the 40K terrain is making this triumphant return for made to order. So you can snag yourself up a Bastion or Line of Martyrs or that's zesty Sky Shield landing pad.
Yep. Which are, and I know some of us, we already know who we're talking about, have already ordered quite a bit of it. So, even though they already have quite a bit, but they're I'm not going to say they're quintessential terrain, but they're stuff that a lot of 30 players usually have and love. So
yeah, I mean it's just terrain. We all want terrain, more terrain for our tables. Yep. We don't want them to be minimalized. I just think that, yay, more Sky Shield landing pads. Have they released a new Warhound Titan to go with it yet?
Not yet, but it's coming. I guarantee it.
Up until I saw
if they release the old Warhound that had the good head on it, not the kind of
the Lucius.
Yeah, if they re-release that guy, yeah, I'll buy a landing pad and buy a Lucius.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was the one that I had. I didn't have the Mars pattern. I had a Lucius one, which kind of cool. But the only problem with that is it was limited on. They only came out with like 2 weapons for it. You got to think it was like the Flamer and the Turbo Laser or something like that, and they didn't have other ones that matched. So the Mars pattern stuff looked a little goofy.
Yeah, it's what it is.
Yep. And then do you want this week's pre-orders?
Go ahead.
Well, I guess technically the Knights are still on pre-order. It's like a 2-week pre-order, but this week's pre-orders we were kind of shocked. We got teases this week of the new non-baghead, non-banana furred Space Wolf Praetor, and that was pretty impressive. I was pleasantly surprised, even though like with all the jokes and everything that everybody does about how bad some of the previous Space Wolf sculpts have been, among probably some of the worst so far in Horus Heresy, and then there was the Mark 6 add-ons that weren't Power Ranger-esque wolf heads. Let's say that. These ones are actually pretty cool looking as well. Both surprises. They were teased this past week, and then lo and behold, they're going to be on pre-order this coming next weekend, or I guess Friday, because Forge World does all their stuff on Friday versus GW on Saturday. But They're pretty cool. I mean, I'm happy they don't look like homeless people with bags on their faces, over their heads, and
That Predator
not
model
Power
is sick. Is so good.
Yeah,
So good.
the fur looks good on it too, which is a little surprising. They seem to have had trouble with those fur coats recently, sculpting them. So
The rune work looks fantastic.
the bolter's correct. It doesn't it's not upside down.
I just love it.
Yeah, I mean it's a good model. It's a really good model. Very happy with it. I'm not a Space Wolf player, but I'm happy for the Space Wolf player. So like Jake and
I'm happy for
Odin
Jake.
will be very happy.
Yeah, I find it very fitting that we did our Space Wolf recording, and then they dropped the Space Wolf
Yep,
Predator heads.
it's like a reward for their efforts.
Yeah, it's like we were prescient or something. I don't know.
So does that cover the news and pre-orders and everything that came out?
Oh, there's a 40K thing called Space Marines Codex, but who cares about that?
Okay. And then as of the recording of this, the 24th of September, we still don't have an ETA on the next book, right?
No, not yet.
No.
We also don't have an ETA on the box set with the Dorito and the Mark IIIs.
Okay. And I don't say that in a angry way because of the 2 PDFs that we got in the surprise drop. I'm very happy on the Heresy front right now. Like very happy.
If I had to guess with the box, it'll be towards the either end of next month or it'll be right before the Christmas stuff. Like they always do bundles for Christmas. They may treat us this first time ever with a Heresy Christmas bundle, which that kind of would be like along this line.
But I would not be upset with that at all.
Usually though, there's a big late October release. In the past it's been Orcs, but like with Space Marines dropping, I could easily see this box be it towards the end of the month. But don't quote me on that. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, Duncan, I'm going to tap you in for our word for sponsors. Are you good with that, sir?
I am good with that. We have currently 2 very kind sponsors who have given us codes for percentages off on their product. The first being Elric's Hobbies, who do wonderful wonderful bases for our miniatures. And you can get 10% off of your resin bases and basing accessories through them with the code HeresyABB on their website. And we are, as of 2 days ago, officially members of the Monumentals program with ProAcryl. And we have a link posted in the Discord and a link posted in the Heresy chats and a link posted in our Facebook group. And on our Instagram, and probably on our YouTubes as well. I'm not really sure on that one. And maybe on Twitter, if we have Twitter somewhere. But that one is the code there for 10% off of products with ProAcryl is also Heresy ABB. And speaking of the ProAcryl paints, the Sanguinius that I'm working on even as we sit here talking, is 100% done with the ProAcryl line. And like I said, he's looking fantastic.
I know I talked with some of the ProAcryl guys Friday after Duncan was working with them this week, and their master painter is coming up with a conversion list of paint colors for the White Scars. So that's what I'm going to end up going with once they get that list back to me.
I look forward to that because I'm wondering if it's going to be anything like my own list of what I'm thinking I need to do for the con.
I think I might be mistaken. I know they have one guy. They may have 2 pro painters kind of like on staff, and so I'll be interested to see what they come up with.
Not to put you on the spot, Duncan, but what are you thinking for white?
So I'm thinking obviously shade and pre-shade and base, but I'm believing that I will probably start off with doing a 50-50 split of the bold titanium white
Yeah.
and the bright ivory, with using the bright ivory to highlight the more sunny side of that, more sunny side of, or where the light would shine on the miniature, and using the bright ivory, using the bold titanium to highlight the bright ivory, kind of give it a kind of like a still white showing through, but showing through as different shades based on the light and dark, playing off of both of that for zenithaling and everything else. Beyond that, the gold I'm planning on using is the rich gold, and I'm probably going to blend that with the Pyrol red for shading that, because I've been doing that to for Sanguinius, and I don't know, neither one of you have seen him in person, but yeah, his gold looks fantastic. And the shading I managed on that with just fluctuating higher levels of the shade of the red or of the flesh washed or dark flesh, putting it in that gold, just kind of gave it a really, really nice play of light and shadow to it. Beyond that, I really like their skin tones too, so I'll probably use their skin tones on him also.
They do have a new dark ivory out, by the way.
They do. I haven't gotten that one yet. That's next on my agenda to get, so I'm going to get that. That looks a bit more kind of a, I don't know if it's a darker gray-ish to the ivory or kind of a darker yellow to it, but I'm going to get it and play around with it before I make any decisions. But I'm looking forward to getting it.
And they also have a new heavy warm white.
Yes, that's another one that I'm looking forward to possibly getting hold of and fiddling with. But I don't have those yet, so based on the colors that I do have,
I'm just throwing
I'll
out
just
white.
fill in what I have. No, you're fine. Based on the colors I currently have, I know what I'm working with. I know how these paints flow. They do great through an airbrush. They do great through regular brush work. The density of pigment in them means to where if you thin them down, you're not really losing pigment, so it's just phenomenal.
I have a question.
I have yet to work with them yet. How are you all thin? How are you thinning them?
So I have been thinning it with just regular airbrush thinner, but Monty over at RFI hooked me up with a suggestion, and he said use some Winsor & Newton Artist Acrylic Flow Improver for it. So that's what I have here. I haven't used it yet because I haven't been airbrushing anything at this point, because I'm past that step. So I will try that the next time I start airbrushing this to see how it does. And if I need to make the switch over from using the generic airbrush thinner from Vallejo, I will happily do so.
When I did the golds on the Brass Scorpion, I used the Vallejo Flow Improver, and that worked just fine. Also, because I like poking fun at you, Duncan, they also have a heavy titanium white. Not sure what that means.
I don't know.
It's thick.
I don't know, but the bold titanium white works just fine. I mean,
it's almost like we could, maybe get in contact with somebody and ask them the differences between them. But
we could.
Are you saying we're not paint scientists right now?
No. We are paint hobbyists. We use paint to paint miniatures, and I'm proud of how well some of us do, and then I'm proud of how some of us don't do. Specifically myself, I don't ever think that I do it well enough.
I got three batches. Sometimes I impress myself, and other times I'm like, dude, what was I thinking?
Yes, I feel that exact same thing constantly whenever I'm doing a miniature.
Well, you do a fantastic job. Tell us about, since you're the one doing the talking right now, and I'll kick it over to Jamie so he has a second to prepare. When you go through picking out paints for a project, how do you go about it?
So that's going to depend on what I'm doing. Personally, and I'll use the Blood Eagles for example. I have gone through about 7 different shades of red trying to figure out a red that I liked for the look. Mostly I start off by figuring out what the actual purpose of the army is, what they're doing, where they are, why they're doing this, whatever, and the situation they're in. So for this army, for example, it is set at the Siege of Terra. So it's guys who've gone through a lot. They don't have the most pristine armor anymore. They don't have the best armor anymore. The best armor's pretty been used and killed. People died wearing it. So that's why I've got a lot of Mark V. It's a lot of the heresy armor. It's pieced together. You've got rivets and studs everywhere. So going with that is the idea of these are the guys who are sitting there and they've gone through the hell of holding the wall. They've seen the demons. They've fought the demons, and they're the ones who are still here, still fighting. I've been working to try to have them with kind of a darker red, not like a bright, proud red, but a darker red to show, hey, they've been around, they've been damaged. They're making do with what they can, and it's fixed as best it can be. And because of that, I immediately dismissed any of the Citadel colors because I didn't have any Citadel reds that I liked. So I tried some Vallejo Model Air on a test model. I tried a red from them, just flat red. I tried Dragon Red from the Army Painter. I tried a Crimson from Vallejo Model Air. I tried an Intense Red from Scale 75, and I didn't really like any of those. So I then tried from Instant Colors, which are Scale 75, Dragon Blood and Health Red. They're dark, but they're not quite the reds I was looking for. So then I tried, this is going to sound bad, Speed Paints from Army Painter. I tried their triad of Pure Red, Carmine Red, Pure Red, Blood Red, Slaughter Red, Archangel Red, and this Wildling Flesh kind of pinkish thing. Didn't like how any of them turned out. It just wasn't the right red for me. So I said, well, I've looked at pretty much all the stuff I have. And I tried 2 reds from the Minotaur Air. Didn't really like them either. So I said, okay, obviously I'm not finding a commercial red that I like. So I'm going to have to keep looking and try to figure this out. So I started looking through my Pro-Acryl stuff, because this was literally just going through everything I had on hand. And I have a couple of reds from them. I've got Bold Pyrrole Red, which is the one that Monty over at RFI uses. And I have a Burnt Red, and I've got a Transparent Red. And so the Bold Pyrrole Red looked very, very, very bright to me, and the Burnt Red looked kind of dark, almost dark enough, but almost too dark, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I started mixing the two of them together, and I found the recipe that I'm using for them, for their dark red, is, hold on, I have it written down here. Give me one moment. It's a 2-to-1 burnt red and bold red. And then after I get done with it and it's dry, I go over the entire thing with a filter of transparent red to lighten it all back up just a small tinge and get it to work. And then after that is all dry, I go back over the entire thing with a couple light layers, and I stress like 4 or 5 to 1 of lamp black with mineral spirits. Very, very light and thin coat of that, and it just kind of brings them all down to a very dark, worn, kind of lived in, roughed up, and fought with red. And I'm really happy with how that's turned out. So it's almost a word bearer's red. They're dark red, but it looks more, it doesn't look quite as menacing or quite as unpleasant, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been doing for their red.
So your normal process, is it going through several different paint ranges trying to find what you're looking for? Is that how you normally do it?
No, no. Normally, I would go with this is a paint I know, this is a paint I like. This is something that I can work with. I can blend in other paints and blend in other filters to make it look the way I want it to. This way, or this one time, since I was doing reds that I wasn't really used to, and I didn't really have a red that I was really happy with for this purpose, that was why I went through so much production and so many different steps trying to find the right red. Because I'll be honest, you've seen my room down here where I paint at. I have literally bottle shelves with bottles and bottles and more shelves with more bottles, and then a box with extra paint, and then another box with extra paint that I literally just did not find the right red that I wanted. I mean, I've got a large pile of paints that I can go through to try to find shades that I like or want. And in this case, I just didn't find the one I wanted. So I just kind of made my own from ones that I knew I already liked and that were almost perfect for it. And they're coming out exactly as I want them to look. So
Good.
To me, that right there is the win.
Yep. What about you, Jamie?
So, for me in the past, paint availability, I've had issues like what I can get locally. And usually I like getting stuff locally just to make sure it's not dried up if I order it, say, like from a vendor or Amazon or whatever. Recently, it's improved a lot. There's a lot more ranges available, so I've opened up what I paint. But usually how I start painting, especially if I'm doing an army, because it seems like I'm never painting anything for myself. I'm always painting something for Toys for Tots, it seems like. I always start with like a theme or a story behind the army. So, an example, like with my Dark Angels, the way I started, I've had this army planned out for a long time. I've been hoarding stuff for years, basically since the Dab Wars stuff originally came out. So one thing I've always liked about the Dark Angels is they were kind of like, the Emperor's ace card or Joker card that he used with when he decided to try and take Mars, and a lot of their gear and war gear especially was geared up to fight the Admech. So this army, my Dark Angel army, the way I started building it out was pretty typically it was all Black Knight stuff, but a lot of the weathering and the bases in particular with the weathering were Martian dust or had oranges and ochres and stuff like that mixed in with the colors. So that's how I try to start with a theme for the army and then go through and pick out suitable colors. Like I've done in the past, I've done Admech stuff, and so I envision them, fighting on like an industrial wasteland type planet. So acid, a lot of acid waste and oxidation on the naked and bare metals, and then like on the bases there'd be like basically pools of acid and stuff that are just kind of bubbling up from cracked cans, and it'd be splashed on the models themselves, especially in the weathering on the vehicles, and like if they've stepped on something, or it's gotten like a lot of the Skitarii. I can't remember what the 30K ones are with the pikes and all that are the Titan Guard guys. I can't remember what they're called, but like on their capes and stuff, you're gonna have all that kind of splashed up around the bottom edges and stuff. So I try to theme all the colors like that, and I'm not a great painter by any means. I'm happy. I'm not. I try to take classes when I can, which, is not a lot, but it helps improve my skills and everything. But I have, like, pretty comprehensive paint charts and comparisons of different paint ranges. Like, basically, the step-by-step from, this is the base coat, this is a wash, this is, an intermediate that's thinned down, and then this is the final kind of, like, almost dry brushed on it. I've got lots of photo references for that to go through to go pick paints out for these armies. And I don't do a whole lot of mixing. I do a lot of layering or Some of the weathering, I'll do some dry brushing, but not very often. Maybe like along metal edges or hard edges on tanks and stuff like that. But it's mostly layering with washes in between and thinning stuff down, opposed to like mixing two paint colors together to get something else.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
It's not. It's more for me. It's a more. It's a little bit easier for me to do because I've had when I have mixed paints in the past. Like an example, for Alpha Legion, which everybody this is like, oh, I used were they clears, like Tamiya clears or Winsor Newton clears.
Yep.
Inks, like ink clears.
Yep.
And the problem is when you mix paints, especially like clears and inks, is that you have to make a sufficient enough batch of it that if you won't run out painting that army. Because if you run out painting that army, regardless of how well you measure it and how well you document the mixes, it will not turn up the same when you try to reproduce it if you have to make more paint.
You're not wrong at all.
And I've run into that enough times in the past doing Heresy armies and like Toys for Tots armies that I've kind of steer away from it. And because of my experiences with it in the past. Now, if I do have to mix something because I'm trying to get a very desired effect, I usually get like a huge container, like basically like almost like a glass beacon, or with a like a sealable top, like an O-ring gasketed top, so that it won't dry out. But I make a huge batch of like if I have to mix paints, which I've done on some colors, especially for the bases on this Dark Angel army. Of course, they stopped making the paint that I was using, so I've had to go and find alternatives to replace the paint that's no longer made, which is kind of perturbing. But it's turned out okay in the end. So.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of want to address as well. I've done paint mixing and saving paints in larger bottles just so I can have the same mix that I want for an army or for a unit for when I run out of the actual mix I currently have, and I still need more because I'm doing more on that army or more of an actual unit or what have you. And that's a big thing that's been kind of a problem, is a lot of these paint companies and gaming companies that have these various mixes, once they get done with whatever line and they stop making it, it is next to impossible to rediscover that same formulation and get it the same way. It's kind of like the old Forge World airbrush paints.
Yes.
Which we all loved and used, and they stopped making. Or kind of like the P3 black that
Cold
black. Cold black.
Mm-hmm.
Cold black that so many of us use to highlight blacks.
So, like, if I find something that I know I'm going to use a lot of, like for highlighting or shading or layering or whatever, people will think I'm crazy, but I will buy, like, bulk just to make sure I have enough of it to make sure. And if I have stuff left over, great, I can use it on another army, but I don't like having to scour to try and find paints, like, just basic colors at that. So, like, when I find stuff, I will buy a lot of at one time of, like, basic colors just to make sure I have enough to finish it.
You are not wrong, and I really wish that I bought more of the Forge World airbrush paint for the Sons of Horus, those two greens. I really wish I had bought more because I've now painted 2 armies, and I'm entirely out of one of those paints.
So I have the GW versions of them. I don't know if they're close enough to the same, but if you need them, I'll be more than happy to let you know.
I've got a couple of the GW versions, and I've got a couple of the Vallejo versions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a scale 75 mix that's close to it, but none of them are the exact same
color count.
So that makes it really hard for everything to really match up for the army as a whole. And I just wish I had bought more. So,
well, that's kind of why I brought it up. Is like I'm just saying, like if you're painting armies, like not like squads, but if you're painting like decent sized army or armies for other people. That's what I always recommend doing, is making sure you go overkill on your core paints, because you don't know if they A, are going to stop making it, B, run out, or change the formulation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'll be honest, when I discovered these reds from Procryl, I bought like 4 of each one of these.
Yeah.
And I would happily buy more, but I bought the store out. So, but it's okay. And I'm kind of the same way with their coal black, which is not quite the P3 coal black,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so close that it's good enough for government work. And I will say that I have highlighted black with that, and it looks good. It looks almost exactly the same way, or give that same look to it as the old the P3 coal black does, and I'm happy with it.
How about you, Jack?
My process for figuring out an army, unfortunately, is not lore based like you all are, because you are much better people than I am. Um, mine, mine is very much a technical base of what do I want to learn to do.
Gotcha.
When I did my Death Guard, it was I want to do weathering. I want to learn how to do weathering. Like I even omitted steps in my normal highlighting process so I could get to weathering. Um, almost every army project I take up is because I want to work on a technique or I want to experiment with something that I haven't done before. Um,
Now, see, I used to do that a lot too,
Mhm.
especially with the TOTS armies. I'm not going to say I would, I mean, we'd still vote on the different armies, but like I would almost pick an army just to try something new out, paint style or something like that, just to get the experience.
Yeah, and then for the actual paints themselves, I I'll be honest, like I steal from other people. Like why reinvent the wheel when it comes to
Right.
paint processes? The only thing that I do is if I find a set of colors or a painting, guideline that I like, I try to make sure it's in colors that I know are going to be around for a while. Um, you know, you can say bad things and good things about GW. Their paint range is really good. Like for what they try to do to get people to put paints on model, their paint ranges, their paints are good. They do what they're supposed to be doing. They've changed the names and the formulations on stuff too many times for me to feel like they're going to be there when I start adding on to Ultramarines in 2032 again. Um, so I've
Yeah,
desperately tried to expand out to like the Vallejos that have been around for a long time, and even then they changed the formula for stuff. But I try to make sure that whatever I do is going to be around for a while. I've been expanding a lot into Liquitex, um,
Mm-hmm.
this base inks. Um, I've been slow to dip my toe into the Pearl Krill range, simply because hopping into like the new kid on town, you don't want to be caught with paint recipes with paints you can no longer get. Like I desperately want to do a Raven Guard army, but like I have 2 bottles of the Coal Black. I know I could technically find more someplace, but it's just going through the hassle of trying to find more of the Coal Black to do a Raven Guard army. So those are my steps.
I can't really disagree on the whole. I know we all bash GW on a lot of things, and I'm trying to stay away from that personally right now. But I have used a lot of GW paints over the years. I mean, hell, I still have some of the GW paints from '92 that I still have in bottles that still work and are good. My issue with GW paints is they've changed their producer of their various formulas so many times, and they've changed their shades so many times that I just got really tired of it. Um, like their their Catacan green, you can't really get that same green from the old bottles as you get with the current bottles. You can't get their same flesh tones as you used to get. You can't get the same metals tones that you used to get. It's just it kind of bothersome if you're trying to do stuff and then come back a year, 2 years, 5 years, and recreate the same look. You just can't do it very well.
And I think the issue with us, like our demographic, is we're not painting like one-off things. We're painting armies. So we
Yeah.
want we want to be able to recreate the same effect time and time again with the same tones, the same color, the same warmth, over and over and over again. Like, like
You're not wrong.
I'm at before this latest expansion of stuff that I did for Ultramarines, I'm at 10,000 points of Ultramarines right now, and I want my first one to look as close to the last one I did, to best of my ability. Like I'm looking at picking back up the Alpha Legion. When I did their base coat, much like James was talking about mixing colors together, and the way I combated that was every time I went through a third of a bottle, I mixed up another batch and mixed it in with that bottle, and it kept painting.
Kind of blended it.
Yeah. That way, as it screwed one way or the other, it wasn't like, oh, here's this one jarring unit that doesn't look right. It's like, and it works really well with them. It's like, oh, the color kind of changes throughout the whole entire army. Without something like Alpha Legion, you can get away with.
It looks more natural for them. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for people who are trying to come up with themes, or jumping into a new project?
For me, lore. I mean, do your homework. Certain armies fight certain ways. They were involved in certain battles. They're used in certain ways, and they fight with certain equipment. Before I start painting anything, even if I'm not using the specific colors, I will always go online, not necessarily maybe to GW and Forge World to look, but just go and look at other people's armies. So like I'll go look up Dark Angel tanks or specific tanks or aircraft or whatever, and I will literally just print them out. And I have a corkboard over right in front of where I paint, where I'll just pin them up, just kind of give me a reference as like this is kind of what this finished model looks like. I'm not painting the same colors, but it just kind of gives me ideas on areas where I need to pay attention to, like color-wise or shading-wise or weathering-wise, that you don't necessarily, like if you have trouble visualizing what you're trying to do, it's just kind of, it gives you a visual reference to go back to. But again, my stuff is all, I'm encouraging people to read books. I mean, amazingly enough, or even if you don't like reading the Black Library novels, just the rule book. The rule books, we've been very, very fortunate that the Heresy rule books, and I'm not talking the Forge World ones, I'm talking like just 2.0 forward, has a lot of really good reference material in it. And pictures of armies, and be it digital or CGI painted, or like hand painted by like by the Forge World painters. So I mean, great reference materials that were just literally already at your hands to come up with stuff for like that.
Yeah, my advice would be still from other people. Like there's like run like a gypsy, find a paint scheme that you like. The most important thing that I can convey to anybody, especially if you're building an army, find a scheme that you can do for 5,000 points, that you're going to be able to do for 100 models. You don't want to come up with a paint scheme with paints where it's like 87 layers to get to just the first base coat, and you get burnt out after not even with the first squad.
That's huge. That's huge.
That's one thing I want to bring up. So if you're painting big armies and multiple times a year, you have to pick your battles, okay? You're not going to paint every unit like a Primarch, the amount of detail and the amount of time you're going to put into painting a Primarch. So you have to pick your battles. So like if you're just doing tactical squads, if you have the time and the willpower, you can go hardcore and paint it up like as many layers and blending and all that as you can as a Primarch, but it's a tactical squad and a Rhino. You're talking low end 200 points, something like that. So why are you going to waste all the time? I mean, I understand trying to make it look good and stuff. Whereas then if you have a Primarch, or like for me, like Inner Circle Knights, I probably put, I have a 10-man squad of Inner Circle Knights. I probably put as much time into each one of those Inner Circle Knights as I did the Lion. Because it's a very special unit, and there's not, I'm not going to have a whole lot of them in my army. You know what I'm saying? So you have to pick your battles on how the level of detail you're going to put into certain units in an army.
And if you mess up, you're okay.
Right.
It's paint. Don't.
So I'm going to say this. For picking an army and building a theme, obviously you have Google. You have Lexicanum and the various 40K lore sites. And you have 60,000 billion words written by the Black Library authors in the Heresy novel series, in the Black books, in the various spots you can find the fiction. Pick something and base your army off of something that appeals to you.
Yep.
If you find that you like the word bearers because of this one battle and you really like how they played out in this scene and you think that it's the best thing since sliced bread and you want to go ahead and make your army based and themed off that, cool, do that. Then sit there and figure out what kind of world that was, and then figure out what kind of army it was or the force it was that actually went there. Were they fresh? Were they beaten up? Were they brand new inductees, or were they line Legion vets? And then if you're doing more of a veteran unit, when you're building them, personalize them. Personalize the various Marines. Like the way I did my my tactical squads for the Sons of Horus is I've got one squad that is literally, it's an examination of one squad from the beginning of the Heresy to the end of the Heresy. And the very first batch of the Tactical Marines is all of them have basic iron armor. The sergeant has a special Sons of Horus helmet, and they all have tactical. They all have bolters. They all have squad markings that makes them part of the same squad. And then the second squad has the exact same paint scheme, but with more battle damage. And in there's a couple of them who have special helmets. There's a couple of them who have a chainsword on their belt. There's a couple of them who have different chests and one or two sculpted shoulder pads, just to show that, hey, these guys have been around a while. They're more important, so they've got more of the bling to them, even though they're still just a tactical squad. And then the third version of the tactical squad is all of them have extra close combat weapons, extra grenades, sculpted shoulder pads, special helmets, special torsos, because they're all more experienced. They're all more personalized, even though in the game they're still just a tactical squad.
I mean, I do the same thing. Yeah, same thing with like red squads and stuff.
Yeah, and I put more weathering on them, but it's literally just showing same dudes, same paint scheme, different squad markings because they're no longer like the first of the 18th company or the 10th company or 10th squad of the 10th of the 18th company or whatever. Now they're like the second squad of the 4th company because they've been elevated through their ranks or what have you. And I did the same thing with my despoilers that same way. The first squad is in Mark III, then I've got another squad in with minimal Sons of Horus bits, and then I've got another squad in Mark IV with more Sons of Horus squad bits and markings, and it just literally tell a story with your army.
Yep.
But like Jack said, remember, you're painting an army. You're not painting off one model. You're not painting off 10 models. If you spend more than 10 hours painting a squad of tactical Marines, you're taking probably too long to do it.
Or they're Alpha Legion in disguise.
Yes, or there's something special to you. And if there's something special to you, more power to you. Take as long as you want to. But a generic squad really shouldn't take you much more than 10 hours to get all 10 of them done.
Like a squad of inductees for most armies, I wouldn't be spending a whole lot of time because they're brand new off the assembly line. You know what I'm saying?
Just get them done, get them on the table.
Yep.
And if you have a scheme that works well for them and you want to continue that for the rest of the army, write it down. Make certain that you're good with it, and make certain you have the supplies you need to keep doing it, because you're going to paint 30, 60, 120 however many dudes, all in the same scheme. Now, if you have special guys in it and they have slight variations on that scheme, cool. Just make certain that it's something that you feel comfortable painting and you want to paint, and you have the supplies to paint, because you're repainting more of them. And then just remember to understand that you're not going into this painting a one-off thing that's going to go up for the Golden Demon, unless you are, in which case more power to you, do your own thing. But you're painting everybody for an army that plays on a battlefield. They're going to be lots of them. They're going to have vehicles. Make certain it looks good on a vehicle as well as on a dude, because if your vehicles look different than your dudes, it's kind of jarring.
It is.
And when you're building your commanders and painting them, make certain you're still following that same basic scheme, but give them more love, if you know what I mean.
Depth, love, or yeah.
More bling.
Take time going back and forth with the layers. Make sure give them an extra pass on the trim. Work, instead of doing like 2 colors on the leather work, go ahead, work it up, like 3 or 4 colors, but leather with washes in between.
Yep.
Do some blending on the colors, or work a little bit harder on, especially on like capes. For me, if I'm doing something that's very important, like a commander or a Primarch or something, like on their capes, I will spend a lot of time working on the light sourcing, how it shines on the high parts versus the shadows where it folds in and stuff like that.
And one thing I really want to say for everybody, because I know this is something that a lot of people hate, is painting faces.
Yeah.
I personally don't like doing it. I can do it. I have done it, and I'll end up having to do it again. But I'm honestly not a fan of painting faces. I never think that the faces look good, in my opinion. But
I have trouble with the eyes.
If you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh man, I got to paint this sergeant, and he's got this helmet, or he's got this head that's got flesh, and it's going to take me like 6 or 7 hours to get this head to where I'm happy with it. Just don't do that. Pop that head off, slap on a helmeted head, and roll on. If you see something on a dude that's going to sit there and make you irritated to have to do it, that's not going to encourage you to get it done. That's just going to encourage you to quit and go do something else.
Paint things that bring you joy.
Yes.
So, like, I know on, like, my Primarchs, I actually magnetize their heads if they come with 2 head options. Some of them will be helmeted, some of them will have the head. So, like, I am like Duncan. I don't like painting faces. I can do it. The thing I have the most trouble with is usually the eyes. They look like they're stoned out of their gourd. I can't do eyes very good. I've gotten decent with the blending of the flesh tones and the shades, like your cheeks and stuff. But what I do is just magnetize the head, because like if they put a helmet on, that's probably what I'm going to put out on the table, because that, to me, that's what looks the best. And so.
Yep.
No, I don't blame you at all on that.
And these are resources, your hobby friends that you have around. YouTube, like I've learned so much stuff from YouTube, and don't limit it to our hobby videos. One of the ones I watch a lot is Boulder Creek Railroad by Luke Townsend. He does HO scaling, but like the amount of work he does into weathering is this insanity. And that's where I based off most of my weathering with my Death Guard, was him weathering stuff on his channel and doing the the basing for us, but the train beds and the mud and all that good stuff. Use your resources.
I'm going to say this: we've all been around the hobby for a long time, and none of us are sitting here preaching anything to one another. We're literally talking for the people who are listening. And if you are new to the hobby or new-ish to the hobby, I know this is going to sound absolutely insane, but find yourself a way to take one of the various paint classes that are online. And I don't just mean watch a YouTube video. While watching the YouTube videos is very helpful, you can't sit there and ask the person you're watching a question while they're doing it. People do live streams on Twitch. People do live streams on YouTube. We have hobby hangouts on a semi-regular basis here on the Discord. I know there are other Discords that do hobby hangouts, and you can sit there and watch other people paint stuff. Bounce ideas off of other people. Ask them how they do stuff. And I promise you, most of us who do these things are going to be more than willing to sit here and go, this is how I do it. And they'll walk you through it step by step, and they'll show you how it is done flat out on a video, showing you how they do it. So you can sit there and ask them questions while they're doing it. Why did you put that red tone there on that cheek? It doesn't make sense. Why do you have a green tone on his chin? Why do you have a yellow tone on his forehead? And you're going to sit there and you're going to hear these things, and you're going to see, and you're not going to understand why. And then as you see them explain it and go through it, you're going to start figuring out more and more, hey, this thing might work for me to do this. Hey, this might not work for me to do that, but I could do this other step to cover it up and make it look something like I could feel works and passes. And there are so many commission painters out there and commission paint companies that do stuff like have Patreons, like Little Legends, Matt Kane. I will be 100% honest. I did not ever think I would paint at the level I do. And it is purely because a buddy of mine named Charles decided to invite me to go to a paint class with him hosted by Ryan Kimmel in Indiana. And yes, I do mean Jack, who actually talked me into doing it. And this was back in 2018 when I just had gotten an airbrush, and I was like, I did a fine, Army. It's nothing all that big. It's fine. It just looks okay. And then he was like, hey, we could try this. And he had to talk me into it because I was like, no, I don't really care. I don't want to do it. My stuff's never going to be winning any paint competitions. I don't care. And then he talked me into it. And we went. And the class literally blew my mind on stuff that I did not know how to do. And during literally 2 days of a 5-day class, because I couldn't be there for the other 3 days because I had to work. But those 2 days have formed the basis of how I literally have turned myself from a workable painter to, I'd say, quality level decent to good.
Where you been and where you are now is night and day, sir.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I can look at my old stuff and go, dear God, that's terrible.
I still have my original Cal broadside that I painted with Tester's enamel paint, or not enamel paints, like when I first got in the hobby, like just as a reference to say, this is how bad you are, this is where you're at, keep going, you know?
I never thought I would be sitting here working on a Primark that I was willing to paint. I always thought, hey, I'll have some commission painter paint my Primark for me.
Yeah.
But now I'm sitting here, literally, I painted my Horus, and I'm really happy with how he looks. I painted my Angron, and other than the fact the sculpt is too small because it's Angron, I'm happy with how he looks. And I'm sitting here painting Sanguinius, and I'm amazed at how he looks even compared to Horus, who I put ridiculous levels of time into. And I'm just, use your resources, and if you have the time and you have the finances and the resources, take a plunge on a painting class, because you will learn so much stuff.
Even if you can't do the classes and you can just still hop in those hobby hangouts that a lot of people have. I know, like, the ones that we have, I know me and Duncan and Jack are usually in them, and we're not master painters by any means, but we've painted a lot, and we have a lot of experience with painting and talking with those hobbyists and the classes and the professional painters. So we kind of know the questions to ask and to help people out. And another, I know with ours, usually when we have them, Brian, friend of the show, I'm not going to say is a professional painter, but he's a very high-level painter. He's done a lot of the classes, and he's in those Discord groups with those high-level, Golden Demon level winning painters as friends, and he's a great reference. Like, if I have a question about skin tones or a color combination, he is like one of my go-to people, because just the volume of stuff that he's painted at high levels, he's a very good person to go to if you have paint color combinations or suggestions on paints. And it's not just like one brand of paint either. He does all different, whatever he needs to get the outcome he's looking for, he will use. So, but there's a lot of more, and not just Brian, but there's other people that are like that. Like John comes up with crazy stuff all the time too. John Christensen here on the show. I'm not gonna say he does more with less because the volume of stuff that he's painting at one time, he goes for not necessarily like the best quality paints, but like cheaper bulk economy levels of paint. So what he's able to accomplish with that is usually very, very impressive. So
I'm also gonna say this: if you're listening to this, you're probably a member of various heresy groups, miniature groups on Facebook or various other social medias, and you probably see people post stuff into Facebook of how this is the final product of my X, or this is the final way I had this Jetby look. And if you see someone post something and you're just amazed at how it looks, ask them.
Yes.
Ask them in that thread or send them a message and say, hey, I really like how you did that. How did you do it? I want to try to emulate something like that. And I promise you, we're not all sitting on our bags of secrets. We're not sitting here going, I don't want to tell anybody because then someone else will know. No.
I passed along my blue recipe yesterday.
I literally talked to people the past 2 days when doing hobby hangouts and told them, hey, this is what I did. This is how I did it. This is why I did it. And they showed me Joseph, a friend of ours and a friend of the cast, and a listener, was like, hey, what do you think of this Leviathan? Where do you think I should put more colors? And I was like, well, you've got a lot of yellow here and a lot of yellow there. You should probably break up this yellow with this color here, break up this yellow and black transition with some metallics here, just to give it more of a kind of tied together look, not just yellow and black kind of jarring, you know what I mean. And if you feel intimidated by painting a specific color, like yellow, like white, like the seafoam green or purples or whatever, if you see a color and you have no idea how to paint it because you're concerned with how difficult it is because people have said whatever, it's hard to do, you don't want to have to do it, try. Ask other people how they do it. I can tell you, Jack's Imperial Fists are yellow, and I despise painting yellow. And his yellow looked great.
I cheat.
Just ask them.
So, like, one thing I do if I'm trying colors out and I can't really decide on what I'm going to do is that I have, a lot of people do this, is that I have, like, just a crappy rhino that's been repainted probably, like, 40 or 50 times. And I'll just throw it in the stripper or stripping, cleaning fluid or whatever, clean it off, reprime it, the prime that I want to use, like whatever I'm going to base coat or prime, and then try the different colors. Another thing I have is it's sheets. It's kind of weird. It's plasticard. It's like a sheet that where I get them is at comic book stores. It's comic book dividers that go in between sections of comic books, and it's literally just thick plastic card. Pretty decent size. You can prime that and then hit it with the base coat, and then and it's wide enough that you can try different streaks of colors and see how you're going to go with it, and literally compare them right next to each other. The one reason a lot of people like using rhinos or like the push fit marines is because you're going to get complex curves or shapes that you normally wouldn't with just a flat piece of plastic card. But
I have an assault that I'm used to try new paints on it, and every time I pull it down, I hear it yell at me, "Father, no!"
Yeah.
I've got some not assault marines, but generic push fit tactical marines from years ago that I have the exact same thing I do with. Oh God! How many more shades are you going to put on here before you strip me and do it again?
Remember,
Go ahead.
Remember turn signals on a Land Raider? That one marine.
Yes, I do.
Yep. That's just what I have in my head.
Yeah, now, it's pretty close.
If I remember correctly, John, he actually usually uses, of all things, plastic spoons, like disposable plastic spoons that he will prime, base coat, and then paint. And the reason he does that is because it's curved. They're usually curved, or they have some straight lines on them. So
that's a good way of doing it. Just generic plastic spoons that you get from wherever you get food from wherever.
Yep. So.
And one thing that we haven't even touched on is no matter what paint you're using, congratulations, you're painting your miniatures.
Yes.
That's a wonderful step.
Yep.
The most important thing that we can recommend to you is no matter what shade you're coloring it, no matter what paint brand you're using, no matter what, thin your paints. Because you don't want it to obscure detail, and you want it to flow properly and nicely to where it gives it a good, even coat, no matter what you do.
Unless you're doing texture paint, which that's a different story.
Texture paint.
That's different.
Or like Smooth Grime from AK Interactive.
Or the
like
buds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't think that glazing, things like that, is hard, glazing or washing, because you can make your own glazes and your own washes really easy just by adding a lot of water to a minimal amount of paint, just to get that shade and that tone going, and then multiple wipes over it to get it kind of blending properly. Painting is painting. If you're doing it, you're having fun in your hobby and you're doing what you like, more power to you. The more effort you put into it, the better your results will be. The more practice you put into it, the better you're going to get. And you can sit there, if you started off painting yesterday, and a year from now, if you sit there and you've kept working on it and kept working at it and trying to grow and trying to do better each time, you're going to sit there and a year from now, you'll look at it and say, man, this is where I started. This is where I'm at now. I can really see the difference.
Yeah. And tell us if, one thing I would like to ask from this episode from our listener is tell us, what other, information you would like. How can we help give this pass this information along to you in a better medium? If it's videos, if it's me making Duncan paint all 18 different leasing colors when using only Prolifril.
I'll do it.
We'll do it, man.
One model at a time. Like, tell us, we want everybody in this hobby to have fun and succeed. So just let us know what we can do to make that better.
Yeah,
and have fun.
This is also something that kind of needs to be said. The Heresy community as a whole, we take a lot of pride in our work. We're proud of how we paint. We're proud of how we play. We're proud of the actual setting. We take a lot of joy in all the stuff that's not just the actual games itself. Take pride in the work you do. If you do it well enough to where you're happy with it or you think it's good, show it off. If you have other questions, let us or someone else know. It doesn't matter who. You'll get more guidance and more help, and you'll find some of the most welcoming people you'll ever meet in your life, and you will make lifelong friends out of members of this community. And really, isn't the best part of Heresy the friends that you sit there and play the game with, and you hobby with, and you talk to, and you hang out with? Personally, I think so.
So, all right. I feel like we've hit that on the head on this, our third Hobbysode, probably.
I think so.
So
like that, yeah.
There will be more in the future. We all promise that.
Yep.
Yeah, send your feedback and let us know what y'all want to see. So or hear or whatever, pictures, video.
Yeah, and if you want to get motivated, go over to the R5 Discord and watch their painting contest and look at the all the submissions. Like, I didn't realize Artist of All, who's a 3D designer, is a solid painter.
Yep.
Yes.
Like, impressively. Like, he can design, he can paint. I don't like the guy because I think he's the whole entire package.
He's the total package.
He's the guy that my girlfriend told me don't worry about.
Don't worry.
That's the one. He's the guy you have to worry about then.
All right. So, anything else we want to cover tonight?
Thank all our listeners. Thank our patron, Brian.
Brian, thank you. Thank you to our sponsors again, Elric Hobbies and Monument Hobbies for Pro Acryl. Get 10% off at both of them through using the code HeresyABB on your basing supplies from Elric's and your bases, and your paint and painting supplies from Monument Hobbies.
Yep.
And stay accountable to yourselves, stay accountable to your hobby, and stay accountable to your buddies. And we'll talk to you the next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Hold on 1 second, guys. Welcome to the 56th episode of the Heresy Accountability Buddies. Because I was wrong.
So let's redo the intro then.
No, that's fine. I'll cut it in. I'll make it a joke.
Okay.
All right, let me stop this recording. Okay.